Ladies and gentlemen, I'd call upon Mr. Longfellow to lead us in our national anthem. Joel?
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons' command. Quand ton bras se porte les veilles, il se porte la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée de plus brillant exploit. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you very much, Joel. We appreciate it once again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Madam Clerk, are there any addendum and delegation items this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None this evening.
I entertain a motion to confirm the agenda. Moved by Councilor Doucette, second by Councilor Bodner. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? There being none, there shall be so noted. Oh, Mr. Bodner, you do, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A conflict with item 10 as it involves Schertzen Shores, and I have a business inside there, so I won't be voting on that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that has a conflict of interest? There being no further, that Mr. Bodner's conflict will be noted. I entertain now a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole 10-17 held on April 10th, 2017. Moved by Councilor Dance, seconded by Councilor Kenny. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. Councilor Kenny?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Items 1, 2, 6, 7. Thank you.
I have 1, 2, 6, and 7. Adam Demery, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 8, please.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else on my right? On my left, any items for discussion? Councilor Dant?
Item 10 for the conflict.
Item 10, thank you. Anyone else? Then I call for a motion to approve those items not requiring a separate discussion. Moved by Councilor Maine, seconded by Councilor Demery. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? It's carried. We have a number of presentations this evening. I'd call upon Fire Chief Tom Cartwright to lead the first one.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship, members of council, and the viewing public, senior staff, and people in the audience. It's a pleasure to be here this evening to make a presentation. I'm going to ask my Fire Prevention Officer, Scott Lawson, to come forward. He's the gentleman that organized this and runs our Facebook, and he's going to give you a quick rundown as to how we got here this evening. So, Scott.
Mr. Mayor, member of council, senior staff. In 2016, each class in the public and Catholic school boards were visited for a fire safety lesson by Port Colborne Fire and Emergency Services. In 2017, with the increased demand for other initiatives within our city, we didn't want to drop the school initiative, so we came up with a plan. Thanks to a friend of the fire department, Jack O'Neill, he approached us with an idea for a poster contest. Little did we know how well this poster contest would go, and a special thanks. I did invite Jack here tonight. Jack donated close to $700 out of his own pocket to help fund this school project. We approached the schools, great participation by them, and I'd like to thank the principals and the teachers for making this possible. Before I get to the young ladies, one thing about this program that we're extremely proud of in the Fire Service Port Colborne Fire. A lot of these schools actually added fire safety to the curriculum. They are actually teaching this for us now through websites and other information that we've provided. But even more impressive is this program is now being adopted by 6 other municipalities in the region of Niagara. So we have Thorold, St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, Lincoln, Port Colborne, and I'm going to forget somebody, but my apologies for that. With that, our winners aren't just the winners of Port Colborne. They're representing this city, which is kind of exciting for them. They're going on to regional competition, which at that point they could win a 2-night stay for a family of 4 at Great Wolf Lodge, and second prize is 6 day passes for Great Wolf Lodge. So without further ado, these 2 young ladies did a great job, voted on Facebook, and then once we had the winners of the school, council voted for these ladies. So if I could get an Ireland Worrell to come up.
Congratulations.
Maybe we can get the winners up here for a quick photo.
Worship, come on up.
And a Katie West. I should mention that Ireland is from McKay Public School, and Katie West, we'll give that to you from the chief,
Congratulations, sweetie.
is from St. Therese. Come up here, dear.
Can you go to the camera? Yep. Come on up here. Let's go up front and get a picture with the mayor.
Let's go up front.
Let's go. Get up in front of the wheel there. Let's go.
I just feel that fire safety is so important, and I'm just so glad that my poster is helping spread the word that smoke alarms save lives. And I just wanted to thank everybody here tonight. It was such an honor coming.
Thank you. Great. Would you like to say a few words? Don't be shy. Okay.
Thank you, and I'm really glad I won this, and it's really exciting for me, and I hope I win the next round too.
Good. Congratulations. Pretty exciting for us, too. Thank you, Chief. Scott. At this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Stephen Quinn forward. Mr. Quinn is the president of the hockey operations of the Niagara Whalers Junior A Hockey Club. The Niagara Whalers are members of the Greater Metro Junior A Hockey League who play out of the Valet Center and had a very successful year this year. In March, they swept their playoff series, knocking out 4 teams in, I guess that'd be 16 straight games?
12 games.
12 games.
12 games.
In any event, it was a very successful series, and you brought great honor to the city of Port Colborne. It's interesting to know that the last Junior A Hockey Club championship in Port Colborne was in 1943. So our congratulations go out to all the players and the coaches of the Niagara Whalers who won what's called the Russell Cup and have brought this a great honor to our community once more. Mr. Quinn, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Well, first of all, Mr. Mayor, I would like to thank you and the council for all your support in the 3 years that we've been here. It's been nothing but a pleasure to be involved in this community, and we are looking forward to many more years of growing our reputation in the community and being involved with the community above and beyond on the ice. So again, I just want to say thank you, and I have a presentation for you, Mr. Mayor. This is a jersey that we got, Mr. Mayor. An honor. Hopefully we could see you out at a couple games next year with the jersey on, of course. We'll have a special seat for you, all right? So,
In the penalty box?
no, not in a penalty box. So this is for you, Mr. Mayor. So thank you very much for all your support. And again, council, thank you again.
Would you assist me in putting this on?
Oh, okay, yes, sir.
I can't have it look brand new.
Oh, I appreciate that. Okay, are you ready? It's been a while since I had to dress my kid in a hockey jersey. Hopefully, there we go. Hey.
Very good, thank you.
I just need a stick.
You can tell I've done this a couple times, right?
And I'd like to make a presentation to you. On behalf of the city of Port Colborne, we present this plaque to the Niagara Whalers Junior A Hockey Club in recognition of your outstanding achievement of winning the Russell Cup and becoming league champions of the Greater Metro Junior A Hockey League. May I extend congratulations on behalf of members of the City Council and all the citizens of Port Colborne for this accomplishment. Your dedication and commitment to your team reinforces the value of teamwork evident throughout our community. And when I go to your dressing room, I want to see this on the wall.
Mr. Mayor, we will hang this proudly in our dressing room. And again, thank you to all of you for all your support, especially you, Mr. Mayor. Again, it's been a great 3 years, and we look forward to many more. So thank you again.
Can you hoist that up? We should go back to your seat.
Yeah, you want to get a picture real quick?
I might drop it. Oh, that's good.
Oh, no, you're not going to drop it.
Smokes.
I didn't bring the champagne in yet, though.
Come on out here.
Notice everybody moves out of the way. Yeah.
All right, we're good. You take your back.
Okay, that's all
We have one more presentation, and this is to one of our own. I've asked Gina Murdoch to come forward. Gina is a special events coordinator for our Community Services Department. With the guidance of the Canal Days Committee, Gina is the lead staff person responsible for our annual Canal Days Marine Heritage Festival, which you can appreciate is no small responsibility. We have been recently notified by Festivals and Events Ontario that the Canal Days Marine Heritage Festival has once again been named one of the top 100 festivals and events in the province of Ontario. This is a tremendous amount of work and coordination that goes into this festival, and Gina, you are the lead. Our congratulations also go out to your staff, your volunteers, and partners in organizing and sponsoring for making Canal Days the successful event that it is once again. And I'd like to present you with this plaque from Festivals and Events Ontario, being Colborne Canal Days being in the top 100 festivals or events of the year. Gina, congratulations. Yeah. Gina's a little shy. She doesn't wish to make a large speech. We're lucky to get her here this evening. Okay, if we can return to our agenda, we have one delegation listed this evening for a 10-minute maximum. It's Ms. Patty Moss, who will be presenting a report of Port Colborne's roadside mowing delay for 2016. Patty, if you can come forward to the podium. I think the little red light is on.
Hello, good evening, Mayor, councillors, and staff. I am here again with support from the Environmental Advisory Committee to ask for approval to continue my monitoring for the delay of roadside mowing in the trial area. The three roads that are involved in the trial area is Weaver Road, Pinecrest, and Cedar Bay. And to start off with, my monitoring involves with plant identification. So what I do is I notice what plants are flowered along those roads. And last year I found 38 different flowering species. Now, amongst those 38 flowering species, I also took note of seed development again. And what I did, as for this knapweed flower, I opened up flower heads and see if there's any concerns of seed dispersal into farmers' fields and residents' properties. And again, the only plant species I found of a concern was in the thistle family, and I'm going to talk more about that later on. As well as, I wanted to mention, I like timely mowing of the cuts. Last year, the first mowing was performed on May 23rd. I found that was too early to ensure the spring flowering species to have a full development. And also, I wanted to have a June cut. So I spoke with Chris Lee. Having a mid-June cut will enable these flowers to grow, as well as help reduce the amount of vegetation that's grown through the summer months, especially during rainy season like 2 years ago. I have a request from council. I have an idea I'd like to try out. This is a picture of Weaver Road, and what's happened was the tractor went down it, but missed the cutting of the first part of the ditch. How the tractors are designed is they have a mower deck underneath the tractor, then they have an additional arm assembly that comes out and cuts additional 4 feet. Well, in this picture it shows that the arm assembly didn't come out. So what I noticed with that is it enabled the plants that grow in the deepest part of the ditch, such as goldenrod and asters and fall blooming flowers, to grow up and create a natural buffer wall. And why I like this buffer wall is because between the roadside and this buffer wall, there could be plant species that we don't want the seed dispersal to blow onto farmers' fields. So this may act as a natural buffer wall. So I'm asking if Pinecrest Road in my trial area this year could have that similar cut method. I'm just curious to see if there's any beneficial to that. It'll only be on roads that have deep ditches as well. So my next picture is going to show milkweed plant. Now this milkweed plant is the only food source for the monarch butterfly. And part of my monitoring process is I go along these roads and count how many plants there are. Last year I noticed that surprisingly there's 50% more milkweed plants on all the roads. And the only reason I could think of is the year prior, we first delayed the mowing, and that was a great year, had a lot of rain. And so with milkweed plants, they grow two ways, by seed and as well by root development. However, it was great to see all those plants, but last year's drought-like conditions affected the roadside plants, and milkweed plants were the first ones to suffer. What I found was that over half of them were dead before September arrived, and the remaining plants that were still there were not viable for the monarch caterpillars. So that kind of correlate with the results I found with the counting of eggs and caterpillars along these plants as well. So considering what the weather was like and how few plants there were for them, 126 eggs and caterpillars counted, I find I'm pretty happy with the results still. Also, I like to keep in mind that earlier last year in Mexico, one of the largest reserves for monarch butterflies had a winter storm, so that will affect the population of monarchs that are coming up to North America this past year. So I'm already understanding how the roadsides are helping the monarchs, but I really want to expand my study this year into the wild bee. This is just a mapping system of U.S. This is the first mapping system done of the U.S. for native bee habitat. And what this mapping's showing is in the dark blue purple areas shows that's where the high concentrations of habitat for them are located. In the yellow sections, that's where either there's no or very low areas of native bee habitats. What's disappointing in this mapping system is the areas where we need the highest concentration of wild bees, such as all the agriculture lands, they don't have the habitat there for them. So what I'm trying to say here is that I want to take the idea I had with the monarchs and implement the same idea with providing a wild bee habitat alongside our roads. Now, these are pictures of wild bees that I've taken personally myself along our roadside. So they are there along our roads. But I'm curious to see what types of bees are along our roads, what native bees, but also how we can encourage more native bees along our agriculture lands as well. Why should we care more about these insects as pollinators than our honeybees? Well, there's two reasons I have for them. Number one, they're excellent pollinators. And number two, they have handled our environment conditions for over thousands of years. Now, getting back to why they're excellent pollinators, they're solitary insects. Therefore, they're unlike the honeybee who can rely on other bees to provide food for the whole colony, and they work in groups. These bees have to find their own food supply for themselves. They have to find a mate. And on top of it, they have to find homes for their eggs. So they are more aggressive in collecting as much pollen as possible for their own survival because they can't rely on others. And they've been around here for thousands of years. And so for them being around here for this length of time, they have adjusted to our climate conditions. And they also endured our farming practices we've done for the past 100 or so years. And the biggest thing, they have evolved with the flower species that have grown alongside our roads and in our areas that we live in. So while the honeybees are struggling, let's try to focus our attention on the native bees as well that's here already. So in order to do that, I'm thinking I'm wanting more linear strips of habitat for them. So I'm looking for resident support. And this is a picture of a resident on Cedar Bay Road. And they started leaving this, I call it a ditch strip, of flowers ever since I started monitoring 2 years ago. And why I like this method is, well, it shows us after mowing for years and years, multiple times throughout the year, if left be, actual vegetation's been suppressed for all these years, actually does come up to flower. And I'm really impressed with this resident that got me the idea that other residents can follow is they cut the strip just along the border edge of the roadside, which is great because that's where the highest concentration of ragweed species is. Ragweed does not like competition with other flowers, and it thrives in poor soil. So that's why you only see it in the 2 feet from the roadside edge. Oh, another thing with these residential strips I'm looking for, after I see what's grown, like in the Cedar Bay Road strip, I see what vegetative flowers are coming up. I'm going to add additional flowers that I believe that can handle the 2 mowing cuts that's set forth from the city, therefore providing even more flowering species for all seasons of the year. But it doesn't stop there. I'm going to put in native bee habitats as well. There is 2 types of habitats native bees use. There's the ground burrowing bees, so I leave an open spot of dirt for them. And the ground burrowing bees are like the green mason bees shown here, as well as bumblebees. And then I'll also put up posts of basically bee houses. And bee houses are for bees that are like the orchard bees or the mason bees that prefer holes in wood to lay their eggs in. 2/3 of the food we eat require pollination. And looking at this picture, if we continue down this road of taking away all their habitat, we will lose the pollinators. I like to start encouraging us being proactive as a city to make necessary changes to ensure a healthy food supply is available for our future. And I want to just make a mention about sow thistle. Sow thistle is a concern for farmers who don't use herbicides. And we do have a farmer in Port Colborne, and he expresses concerns with me. So I am working with him. I did try the hand removal method and cutting, and I find that neither of them really remedy the problem of there's root systems still underground where these flowers can still grow from. So this year I like to spot spray applications of acetic acid, which is basically vinegar, but I'll be using a higher concentration than a houseful vinegar, but nothing that requires a pesticide, herbicide license though. So I'm going to try that.
Excuse me, Patty, could I ask you to wind up pretty soon?
Yep, I got like 2 slides left.
Okay.
So I'm going to try applications of that method this year as well. And this is the bull thistle as well. You can see it can be a problem with the seed dispersal. Future studies I'm going to be focusing on is predators along the side of the roadsides. This is really important, and I spoke with farmers about this, and a lot of them didn't really think about taking this in consideration. I'm just going to explain what a predator is. A predator is like this one, tachnid fly. It uses the flowers along the roadsides to collect nectar, so it's doing the pollination process for us. But as well as what it does, it goes after the pests as well. And they go after the pests by laying their eggs on live hosts. So, like pests, I consider, this fly considers host insects are tent caterpillars, which is a gypsy moth that lays eggs on, Japanese beetle, and also lays eggs on tomato hornworms, or on tomato plants. And also all sorts of agricultural pests as well. It flies through the fields and lays eggs on. Why I find this is important is there's a possibility that we could reduce the amount of pesticide needed in fields if we encourage more of a habitat along the fields for the predators. Finally, Phragmites. There is a patch of Phragmites on Weaver Road. It's about 5 feet long, 4 feet wide. I like to try a method of hacking it all down to the ground and tarping it, trying to use the suppression method. This method has been successful in previous studies, and I like to try it on Weaver Road because that's a small patch that I think I can work along with the city and ways to pin it down to make sure it doesn't blow away onto the road or the fields, as well as I'll make sure it doesn't prevent any water drainage problems. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you take a few questions from members of council if they have any? Members of council, Mrs. Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Patty, thank you very much once again for your presentation. Great educator, because that stuff I had no idea. But I did have a question about this, and actually I see our chief is still here, our fire chief. I had a call from a resident who wondered if the fire department could go out and burn that, because she has seen that method work in other places. And so I just got this call last week, so now you're bringing it up, and it's a good question. So what do you think of that method if we could do that?
That method is a successful method, but what's after you burn the Phragmites, I've been discussing with other people, they all then next spray herbicides down in the area. Since this is a drainage ditch, I really do feel uncomfortable with any herbicides being sprayed into a drainage ditch system. That's why I want to try the suppression method and see if that works in small pocket areas like this.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Madam Demery?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Patty. Patty, again, thank you very much for all the work you do, and I get to hear reports on this quite often, being with the Environmental Advisory Committee, and it's really does my heart good to know that the work's getting done out there. I have had people ask, telling them about your bee houses. I've had them ask where they can get them. Do you have a source of them? Is there some way that those can get out into the community, or is there some place that people can go to look for how to build their own?
I made them myself, so anyone can Google it and make them. But also the Conservation Authority has mentioned they have bee habitats as well available, that the public can seek them as well to purchase one.
Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions on my left? Councilor Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Patty. Patty, your row of tall weeds in the ditch there that you hope to accomplish, you know what's going to happen with some areas like Pinecrest where there's a large water flow through there and people see stuff in the ditch, you know, they feel it impedes that water flow and increases the flooding on their properties. I'd certainly like to hear from staff as to whether that's something that, you know, should be pursued, or, you know, that there's a number of properties on Pinecrest that have flooding problems. And I don't know how that's going to go over with those property owners. I don't know whether you've had comments from staff on that, or and I'd like to see how staff is going to handle that also, because Councillor Butters and I are going to get the calls on that. So.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
Ron, I just want to make sure, you talked about Phragmites and then you jumped to Pinecrest Road. Now, Phragmites is only located...
I wasn't talking about Phragmites. I was talking
weeds.
about...
Oh, okay, I thought you were referring to...
I'm referring to slide 11 where you show that wall of, looks like goldenrod or something up there that you hope to have in the ditches.
Okay. Yes, the natural hedgerow.
Yeah.
Well, with talking with the Conservation Authority and with Chris Lee, they feel that I spoke with Chris Lee already about this idea, and he's fine with it. He doesn't feel it's going to be any concerns regarding the drainage.
He does he? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd like to run it by staff anyways to see, you know, to see how that's going to be handled.
Ron, I'm just
with
asking,
the neighbors that are there.
I'm just asking for this 1 year to see how it works. That's all I'm asking. I know with Pinecrest, the ones with the major complaints, they don't have deep ditches anyways, and they cut their own grass. So, the one lady has a deep ditch right beside, but the other one doesn't have it. So, what I'm finding is this is just where the ditch area is, where its natural growth is growing, and it's still going to be cut. The full cut is going to be cut still in October. So that hedgerow is not going to be left after October 1st. It's going to be mowed with everything else.
Well, we'll monitor it and see what, you know, if we get a number of complaints, then
I just want to
something will
try
have to be done. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? Councilor Bouzette?
Just giving her a thumbs up. Thank you.
On my right again? There being no further questions? Thank you very much, Mrs. Moss. I'm getting waved down up here.
I don't have a question, but once again, I do have a voice. So I've been here previously, and again, we want to object to this project.
Yeah. Did you register prior to this meeting?
No, because we just found out about this meeting again at the last minute, and so we're here.
Could I ask for leave of council to allow this lady to speak? And if you could identify, well, first of all, we'll get your permission first. Moved by Councillor Bodnar, seconded by Councillor Kenny. All those in favor? Carried. Go ahead. Would you like to ask her, Patty, a question, or would you like to make a presentation?
Just not a presentation, just a few words. That's all.
Okay, could you identify yourself for the record? And could you go to the podium, please?
Yeah. I'd actually like to mention, I did post a summary into everyone's mailbox, including hers. I did state the date, and I'll be presenting here tonight. So I made sure I let all the residents know of any council meetings I'm going to be presenting to, as well as I put on the screen a picture of her ditch as well. So you have a way to show the council your area of complaint as well. Just so you know, this is a picture I taken last year. I believe somebody sprayed something in the ditch to kill everything off, but I'm sure she'll explain why she did that as well.
Thank you, Patty.
Thank you.
Could you come forward and please identify yourself and acknowledge that as your property last summer?
I'm Kathy Kalanick, and I live at 851 Pinecrest Road.
Thank you.
And we've been here, we were here last year, and we asked to be notified if council would be discussing this again, and we weren't told. If it hadn't been that we found the notice that Patty put in the mailbox. And when Patty first came to us 2 years ago and asked about this project, she said she had to notify all the residents and asked if there were any objections, and we said, yeah, we have issues. We have ongoing issues with flooding, as Councillor Bodnar has said. And we said, you know, we need this cut. We need that additional cut. And when Patty came to council and council approved it, it wasn't mentioned that, you know, we had issues with flooding. So last year we came to you and we said we have these issues because, as Councillor Bodnar says, when they finally do the cut, when they get around to doing it in October, it leaves a lot of residue which builds up and impedes the flow when we get rain or we get a big thaw in the winter. This is an inordinate year. We all know we had a wonderful winter, so we didn't have it this year. But last week, when we had the big rain, it came pushing out, and we survived. We didn't have flooding, but it's an ongoing issue. And so we have asked that we get that second cut. And when we came here last year, council said that perhaps we could get that second cut. Just give it to us and give it to Mrs. Grant, who lives next to us, who also has issues with this. This isn't a matter of aesthetics. It's a matter of the flooding, and it's also a matter of people. We don't have sidewalks or anything like that. I walk that block on a daily basis, as do a number of people. And when you are forced off the road because two cars are meeting and they don't yield to you, you have no other place to go other than into all that, the thistles, the tall grass with the ticks on them, the poison ivy, all this stuff that's there, and you have no choice. And I took a tick off myself tonight. Like, ticks are rampant out there. So we need that cut, and you know, there are other areas that you know, Patty can go and encourage help for the butterflies and the bees. You know, how about the Friendship Trail? There's all along those Friendship Trails that she can, you know, promote her natural activities. But you know, this is our house. This is our home, and we pay a lot of money for the maintenance of that drain. That ditch is not just a ditch, it's a drain. It's the main drain, and it needs to be maintained. And so once again, I say, you know, the city needs to, you know, we're paying a lot of money, $7,189 last year for our taxes, plus the ditch bill, paying you guys a lot of money, and we want that cut. That's all there is to it.
Just hold on to a second, Ms. Callahan.
Yeah.
Could we have any questions from members of council? Mr. Bodnar?
Just to highlight how great a initiative this is, and I think it is a great initiative, is that it does impact some people. So we got to strike a balance to figure out how we can do it. And that's why I asked the question, city staff, just give blanket approval to this. You know, we need to look at those certain areas and see if we can alleviate. This isn't a little bit of water on the lawn. This is this is a lot of water in the right circumstances that her and her neighbors can get flooded there. So, you know, we got to figure out how we can make this work. We just can't say, I don't think that tough luck, we're going to plug the ditch with whatever. We got to try to figure out how we can make this work. And that's where I would like staff to come forward and say, we have a plan for this, not just too bad that's the way it is. So anyways, I'd just like to see us staff work along with the residents to see how we can make this work. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bodnar. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Callahan.
I did receive a call from the current ditch person today. I can't remember her name, maybe Angie or something like that. I don't know. Alana, that, yeah, okay, I got the first letter right. And she said, we will be getting the ditch cleaned out, the ditch, next year, not this year. But, you know, like I said, when we left last year, council said they would look into giving Linda and I and us that cut. And nothing happened. So, you know, and I mentioned that to Alana, you know, and she said she didn't know anything about it. So,
thank you for your comments. We'll look into it.
Okay.
Thank you. Next item is the mayor's report. Earth Day, Saturday, April 22nd, 2017. I attended the Evergreen Academy for the Earth Day extravaganza, where various booths and displays were designed to encourage children and adults to be more environmentally aware. Also on Saturday and Sunday, I attended the Green Art Show. This is the 8th Green Art Show we've held in this community, where students from Colborne High School and Lakeshore Catholic High School created unique pieces of art from discarded items. The eco-friendly green program focused on the principles of reduce, reuse, recycle. Compliments to the competing students, the schools, and the organizer. It was very well done. Trout season. Trout season opens Saturday at the St. John Conservation Area's Trout Pond. The pond is stocked several times a year by the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. It is an excellent place to expose children to the outdoors and nature. The grown-ups require a license, but the children do not. And it's a great area to take your children or grandchildren and in a safe environment for them to try to catch their first fish. Festival of the Arts. The annual Festival of the Arts started this weekend and will continue for the next 2 weeks, showcasing the talents of our youth and the efforts of their instructors. Arts Place held their annual fundraising auction on Sunday afternoon. Various items created by the members were auctioned off to help pay the expenses of the art group. The Easter Food Drive, Port Colborne Fire and Emergency Services and Sobeys teamed up on a food drive for Port Cares over the Easter weekend. Thanks to the generosity of the residents of Port Colborne, 900 pounds of food were received, as well as $4,594 in cash. Every little bit helps. The Reach Out Center, that supports many in our community. Volunteer Appreciation Week. This week is National Volunteer Appreciation Week. Every organization in the city benefits from the valuable assistance of their volunteers. And we thank you. Last week, I had the privilege of attending the city's volunteer appreciation dinner, and over 250 volunteers were in attendance and recognition pins were handed out. Congratulations and thank you to everyone. Carla Crawford was at the dinner and she received her 35-year pin, and while not at the dinner, Mark McAvoy and Mona Shooter were recognized for the 40 years of service to the museum. And finally, our regional award, Port Colborne couple Nancy and Dave Salvage for the recipients of the Regional Association of Volunteer Administrators Award of Excellence for the volunteer work they do in the community. Once again, our citizens are being acknowledged for their volunteerism. At this time, Mr. Barrick is not here, so we won't have a report from him. But it's a question now for councilors' items to bring forward. And following that, staff responses to previous council's items. Councilor Kenny and then Councilor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to read a couple of letters that I received from two future constituents. And she just said, my name is Kate. I am 7 years old, and I live in Hawthorne Heights. There's something I need to discuss. I miss the slide and the rocking horse. Would you please make new things for the park behind my house? Definitely monkey bars and a rocking horse. I am too young to walk to the big park by myself. In the same day, I received another letter in my mailbox, and she said, my name is Maya, and I am 10, and I live on Windsor Terrace. I want to ask you about the park behind our house. A couple of years ago, there was a slide behind our house, and before that, there was more equipment. It's all been taken away. I don't want the swings to be taken away too. Could you please replace some of this equipment that you have taken away? My sister and I have lots of fun at this park, on the slide as well as many other families in this area. So two from a 7-year-old and from a 10-year-old asking about the park. Now I understand from our parks foreman that some years ago we decided to remove the equipment in this park because it was outdated, it was old. I would just like it looked at, if through you, Mr. Mayor, through Ron, to give us an idea of how much it would be to refurbish this park so that the children in that particular area can make use of it.
Mr. Hanson, are you in position to respond?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kenny, the question of estimates, a typical playground that we're installing now is in the $60,000 to $65,000 range. So we can certainly take a look at this particular park and look at refurbishment maybe on a lower level if council were to agree to fund it that way. I can remember some years ago that there was a sort of a de-emphasis of this particular park. It wasn't being used, in the opinion of some of the people at the time. So some of the equipment that was outdated and broken, of course, for safety reasons, had to be taken away, and it wasn't replaced at that time. So it's certainly an issue that we can take a look at and see if there's a need now to revisit that and see if some additional equipment would be beneficial to the area. So we'll certainly do that.
Thank you through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Hanson. I would appreciate that because you get them delivered to your house, and I'd like to answer and be responsible to them as well. So if we could just get an idea, if it's a smaller version, Mr. Hanson, that's fine. They just want a little bit there. So okay, thank you.
Madam Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 3 items actually, 2 having to do with the Friendship Trail, so I'll take care of those first. One, I had just received a complaint today about extensive littering on the Friendship Trail out at Sherkston Road. And this is hundreds of little green bags. And I do have pictures of it, which I've just sent to you, Mr. Hanson. But there are hundreds of little green bags, and they're all in the trees and everything. Some of them look like they may have animal waste in them. But they're thrown all over the place. So it's we need to get staff out there and get it cleaned up, but maybe try to figure some way to find out who's doing this and putting some stops in place, because this is just really unseemly. But this was a great weekend to get out on the trails, and several people were, so I really did get a lot of calls about the trails this weekend. So that's one. Also, having to do with the trails and the entrances to the Friendship Trail, that would be off of Johnson Street, off of Durham Street, off McRae and Elizabeth, all the entrances along there, anywhere where there's rocks and an actual planned entrance. In every single case, I went and saw them all. In every single case, there was littering. In some cases, extensive littering. In another case, it looked like someone tried to build a tree house or something in the tree, and there's broken pieces of wood all over the place. There's also broken cassette parts and various pieces of plastic. But the most disturbing of them all is a lot of drug paraphernalia. Now, the neighbors have been very good about cleaning them up. They shouldn't have to, and I've advised them not to do it. But they have been cleaning it up. And it's very much the same kinds of things that I just recently brought in to show council. So we're seeing an increase of this kind of activity. It would definitely benefit the police to hang out a little bit there, when they're doing their reports and that sort of thing, rather than, sitting alongside the canal, maybe hang out at the entrances there. They could certainly drum up some business, I'm sure. But in any case, we're responsible for those neighbors having a better experience. And for the kids that use those areas, quite a lot. In a lot of cases, there's parks right nearby. So we just don't want to have that. But certainly the Friendship Trail has some issues. And we need to get on that. We're in that bike riding's time, and the weather's cooperating, but the conditions on the trail are not. So there's that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was I got some calls from a few residents in the East Village. They were very, very concerned about some rumors that are circulating, which I spoke to Mr. Hansen and Mr. Aquilina about this evening. There's rumors that one particular business has been bought for the purpose of putting in a grow-up. Well, it turns out that's not quite the case, but it's come to my attention that there is someone going around purchasing convenience stores, corner stores ideas, and hoping to use them in the future after marijuana becomes legal to be able to sell drug paraphernalia and medical marijuana. I'm wondering if we couldn't step on some of this now and put some bylaws in place that will make that very difficult. Because seriously, this is the time to do it, not once it's already happening and we're faced with it the way we were with the medical marijuana situations. Because this has got nowhere good to go.
How would you suggest that we...
I truly don't know. I don't know, but we have some pretty creative minds here, and I'm hoping that we would be able to just toss it around, and there might be something that can be done to... I doubt that we could actually stop it, but I think we could make it difficult enough or put in enough regulations that it would be a more controllable situation. I'm just worried about that going willy-nilly and we're getting some real problems out of it. But that's certainly one. And the other was extensive renovations to some of those places that are occurring without permits. Now, my understanding is if there's a building permit, it has to be posted where it can be seen from the outside of the building. Is that correct?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Demeray, that is correct. If a building permit is issued, it has to be posted.
Okay, thank you. So then I can say that there's nothing posted. So if the neighbors are seeing renovations go on, is the best thing they can do to call you, Mr. Aquilina, or?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Demeray, it could be anyone in bylaw enforcement,
okay,
or anyone in the department, but I would suggest that they contact the bylaw clerk, okay, so they can register the complaint, and if it's something that's going on in the construction, then the chief building official would investigate.
Okay, thank you. That's just basically what I wanted to know. I want to make sure that got on COGECO so that there would be general knowledge of that. Thank you very much. That's everything I have.
Does anyone wish to make any comments on other items that Mrs. Demeray brought forward? Mr. Aquilina?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just the one comment with regards to selling of medical marijuana or marijuana, for that matter, as what I've read, and maybe members of council have as well, the legislation that's been tabled by the federal government is to have the provinces dictate how that is going to take place regarding the sale, the location, if it's going to be taxed. Everything still is being considered, and I have not yet seen any legislation or proposed legislation of how the provinces will deal with that. So I'm kind of a little reluctant to bring forward any sort of bylaws because it can be trumped by what the province dictates. Similar to the Green Energy Act. You can regulate windmills, but the province didn't want to have that regulated, so those bylaws that were created were null and void. So I would suggest council sit tight and wait till we see some the provinces get involved with how they're going to regulate it.
Thank you. With respect to the clandestine needle operation, we'll bring that to the attention of the staff sergeant of the local detachment and see whether he can take your advice and post officers there to see when and if there is some activity that is illegal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else have any questions on this issue? On this one? Another issue, Mr. Bonder? Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Dan, I guess. Councilor Butters wanted me to bring up, and I'm certainly in favor of replacing, moving, doing something with the sign on Pleasant Beach Road that tells people nicely where to go for a beach, either Nickel Beach or Centennial Beach. The placement is really not in the right spot. I just wondered, with council's permission, I wonder whether Councilor Butters and myself could get together with Dan's department and kind of zero in on a location or a different sign or something there. It doesn't seem to be doing the job, and it's unsafe where cars have to park on the road, which is a busy road anyways. Anyways, there are problems with it, and I just wondered if that would be a way to handle it, whether we could have some input into possibly where it could go.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, just some history for council. Back on April 25th, there was an appendix to a report that dealt with the parking issues down Pleasant Beach Road. And at that time, the only comment from council was to have the sign actually indicate that there was free parking down at Centennial and Nickel Beach. And that was done. My suggestion is that we actually have a report to council that deals specifically with that sign as to what contents are on the sign, the size of the sign, the location of the sign, and how many signs members of council would like to have down Pleasant Beach Road. There is no parking permitted right from Michener Road right to the beach. So if council is looking to actually branch out and have the signage placed elsewhere, it could be a budgetary item that council should provide direction for staff. So I would recommend that council have a report brought forward after the consultation occurs, and then have all of council decide what they would like to do with that sign.
Thank you, Mr. Aquino. Anyone else have any concerns or comments, questions? No. Staff's turn. Mr. Bonner?
I wasn't quite done, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, got to be quick, sir.
Through you to Mr. Hanson, maybe it's Dan. The trail system and the entrances that were so nicely done last fall with the yellow barriers. The one I'm familiar with is on Empire Road, where it physically stops people and they have to go out and around. I'm sure they were worth a couple of bucks, and they seem to do the job, but I was told at that time the rocks on the side were then going to be increased right across so that people couldn't just bypass that. Right now, people are just riding off the side of the trail and right across the road. There's, we got this great system that isn't working. So there's just something lacking with those stones, the boulders being increased to go across the sides there. I've got some other ideas where you could increase it a little more to stop the dirt bikes and some ATVs from getting on those also. But the placement of those stones haven't happened yet. Where Shirks and Shores is opening this weekend, and that road will get busy real quick. So if we're trying to do something good, we should make sure those rocks are in place. Thank you.
Anyone wish to respond to Mr. Bodner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bodner. Maybe we could have a discussion, Councilor Bodner, to hear your concerns and see what else has to be done there. I can't recollect that we were going to add a lot of additional boulders to the trail entrances. So we have heard some concerns in the last month regarding some of the barriers that they're too restrictive, that some of the recumbent bikes and other devices aren't able to get through. So we need to strike some sort of a good balance, I think, on the barriers themselves. So perhaps we could have a discussion on that. Deal with it.
Anything further from members of staff? Yes, Chief.
On a separate issue, nothing to do with what we're talking about, but fire safety issue, if I could, a couple of items. Just a reminder to council that the 27th of May is Safety Day, going to be held at the fire station again this year. Starts at 10 in the morning and runs till approximately 2 in the afternoon. That's important in itself, but I just also wanted to give council a brief update as to where we stand with regards to our inspection program and smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms. To date, so far this year, in particular, the intensity increased as of March the 1st. We've conducted 250 inspections in homes or been invited into that number of homes. So far, we're at 26%. 184 are non-compliant, 66 were compliant. Still discouraging. We've installed 166 smoke alarms, 45 carbon monoxide alarms, and 53 combination alarms. In addition to that, we've installed 91 9-volt batteries and 28 AA batteries. Over the last 3 years, just so that you know that we have been active in the community, we've installed almost 700 alarms in this community over that 3-year period. That's made up of in excess of 400 smoke alarms, 120 CO alarms, and 152 combination alarms. I want the community to know that we are out there. We are going to continue it. We finished the first phase. We're now entering the second phase. And in the very near future, we're going to be starting the full rural program, which is going to take place on Tuesday nights and on other occasions, including Saturdays, throughout the rural area. In addition to that, my fire prevention officer has been very busy. He's visited 28 multiple residential occupancies in the last number of months, in particular since January 1st. And out of those 28, only one was compliant with the Ontario Fire Code. So to say it's discouraging is to say the least. I don't have an answer other than to continue beating the drum and continue the program. But there's people in the community that really got to get on board with this, because it's only a matter of time when we're going to be dealing with another serious fire. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We appreciate your comments. I don't think anyone can do more than you're doing right now, other than continue with the publicity, encouraging people to bring their homes into compliance with smoke alarms and CO2 alarms.
No, I appreciate your comments, Your Worship, and I certainly appreciate, and I know all of our people appreciate the support Council has given us in the past. There is a large portion of the community that is trying. We are dealing with areas that we've identified as the potential issues. We're trying to deal with those as the highest risk, and we're working into other areas. We're hopeful that in a not too distant future we're going to get better statistics as we move forward into other areas of the city.
If you don't have a working smoke alarm in your home, are you not subject to charges or penalties?
Your Worship, that's correct, you are. We're trying to do this on a voluntary basis at this particular time to encourage people to get on board with us rather than fight us in court or fight a ticket. You can get a ticket written. The intent is that eventually we're going to be writing tickets for in excess of $300 if you're caught without one, and if you're an owner of a property that you rent or lease, we're going to be charging you and taking you to court. And fines right now are a minimum of $5,000 for noncompliance. So that in itself should be an encouragement for people to get on board. We're more than happy to help them. We've actually, over the last number of days, we've just sent out a significant number of letters to property owners asking them to contact our office to set up an appointment, and that's what we've been trying to do. Encourage people in a nice way, in the sense that we notify them we're coming, and with the hope that if they aren't in compliance, they'll get themselves into compliance. But you can see from the statistics that for whatever the reasons, there's a number of people that aren't still in compliance. We really haven't got into a position where we've charged anybody at this particular time, but the reality of the situation is we are going to be starting to charge people. but a lot of negative publicity comes with that. So we're a bit reluctant to have to do that at this time, but I feel that we may have to make some examples of some people.
Thank you. This may be an appropriate time before we leave this topic with respect to the Hawthorne Heights playground, whether we could ask for a motion for staff to bring back a report on this situation. If someone wishes to consider that, I'd be happy to entertain it. Councillor Kenny.
Are you asking for a motion in regards to the playground?
I'm looking for a report.
For a report, yes. I'll make that motion to have that, that looked at for that area.
Is there a seconder for that motion?
Yeah. Seconder, I need a seconder for that, right?
Councillor Emery. Call for the vote. All those in favor? Go ahead. You wish to speak? Mr. Bodner.
So, as much as this is a kind of a neat thing, how can you jump the queue when there's playgrounds set up every year with a certain amount of money put aside? And unless I'm wrong, and staff can correct me, but I believe there is playground scheduled to be completed every year. So I'm just wanting to know whether you want to get in the queue or you want to jump the queue. So staff could enlighten me.
Well, I believe we're not asking for these installation of new equipment. We're asking for a staff report, of which I would assume these other playgrounds that are still waiting for their turn would be brought forward. So we're not jumping the queue. We're just trying to address a situation. Any other member of staff wish to comment?
Well, Mr. Mayor, in response to Councillor Bodner, we have a 17-year rotation on the playgrounds. There's 17 playgrounds that are identified, and they're replaced on a regular rotation. So I believe Sunset's on for this year, so there is a regular rotation. We can bring a report back just to identify perhaps what the needs are over there on the Oxford Park. I know there's going to be some work done at the Hawthorne Heights where the basketball court was. We're going to be some work done there as well. So we can bring a report back just maybe as a status update on them. And there's no, you're correct, Councillor Bodner, in saying there's no additional funding set up for an additional playground to be done this year. So we'd have to take a look at that and see what the needs might be in that area.
That's satisfactory, Mr. Bodner? Okay. Then let's return to the agenda and start dealing with the items.
We have to vote on it first.
Oh. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Now, you have another item, Mr. Doucette?
Actually, I want to continue with the item of the fire. Fire chief indicated there were letters that were sent out. I'd like to see all the constituents call. I called today and made an appointment because they're in my area. We received a letter. They'll be coming out to my place May 8th. If anyone's interested and is not sure about exactly what it's about, come over to my house at 128 McCrae on May 8th at 2 o'clock, and you can see what the firemen do. And then, but it's important that it be done. Very important that it be done. And they'll be at my house on May 8th at 2 o'clock. That's the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Doucette. Is there anyone else that has any comments from members of council? It appears there is none, and then now can we move on to items requiring separate discussion? Item number 1, that was Madam Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Engineering and Operations Engineering Division Report number 2017-12, subject Nice Municipal Drain Petition.
Is there is a second paragraph there, Madam Kenny, that we should probably deal with at the same time.
Just a second, Your Worship. I just got to that. Is that the, you want me to read the highlighted, the memorandum dated?
From Henry Benmere?
Yes, memorandum dated
Yes.
April the 19th from Henry Brenninger, Drainage Superintendent, Nice Municipal Drain Petition / Barrack Heights Subdivision, and minutes of the public information session of April the 12th.
That's correct. Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Councilor Datch. Discussion? Madam Kenny?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is going on for a while with both in that area. There's several people in that area who have complained about the poor rear yard drainage in their property. With all due respect to Mr. Breminger, who's gone there and done intensive look at the problem, and we still don't see any resolution to those individuals. The recommendation I believe that we have, why can't I find that now? It says in here that in this particular case, an estimated cost of $20,000 with the potential of a significant increase in costs due to appeals. It would be cost prohibitive to entertain a petition drain. Is there other options available to these property owners? So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Breminger, if he could come please to the podium, that would be great. I can't get that to do that. I can't get it to go over. No, I want to read another part that came. Options, the options available.
Okay.
I can't find it.
What we found, the swale was intact. That was my understanding was the main focus of the exercise, but I did recommend that one of the options would be, or the option that I felt was much more feasible, is every one of the properties fronting onto Barrack Road has a private drain connection brought into the property line. And so therefore, any incidental or any problem that a landowner, if they wanted a higher level of service or protection, they could address their problem through that connection. A rear yard catch basin in the lowest part of the rear yard could be brought out to that storm connection, and that's far more economical than going under the Drainage Act process. The engineering alone is the $20,000, let alone whatever construction that engineer might recommend. And then appeals. That's been my position from the very beginning when I first went out there some years ago. And for whatever reason, it's not being received very well, I guess.
You're correct in that, sir. You're very correct in that. And I know you've done a lot of work on that, and I truly appreciate all the work that you've done. It's becoming, as you and I discussed, it's becoming almost like an argument between neighbors now because of the swale, and the swale is on the opposite side, on the Hillcrest side. It was meant, I believe, for the Hillcrest side because they're a higher property, right? So because they're a higher ground property, they need someplace to drain, right? So
it was a requirement of what we refer to as the second phase of development.
Correct, of development, that's right. So you've given us a couple of options here, and I know that the residents in that area want this to go. If we're not going to put in an independent engineering study, they would like this to go even farther, and that's to a drainage tribunal. Can you just give me an indication, just for the record, it's not just the 3 people who are on this petition or the properties that we mentioned. On the petition, there are more than, I think, 15 or more signatures, but the 3 mentioned in this report, it's not just about them. So how much or what assessment would be allotted to everyone, I guess, on Barrack Road if this went to a drainage tribunal? How does that work?
If it goes to a municipal drain, then everyone in the watershed of whatever scheme that engineer comes up with, then the parties that are in that watershed will be assessed. So there could very well be people that say, we're fine, we don't have a problem. And now they're going to be brought into this and have to pay on that scheme.
So
I don't know what kind of proportion. That's really the engineer's call. It's not a call that I can make. It's an independent appointment of an engineer who independently then makes his decision on how people are to be assessed and how much.
So, once again, if Mayor through, so to Mr. If an independent engineer then would come in and look at this and make his assessment, the cost then goes back to all of them.
All of the property owners in the watershed, whatever that watershed is determined as by that engineer.
Okay, because also it said in the options, another thing in the options, it said council could accept the petition but not immediately appoint an engineer in an attempt to resolve this issue through compromise.
And
the compromise would be what? Have the people that are most affected come out to the front?
Yes, that's what we tried to attempt with the public meeting.
Okay.
To sort of rationalize the situation.
Okay. That's all my questions for now, Mr. Mayor. There may be others that have questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any others that have a question of Mr. Benrier or otherwise? Mr. Main.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Henry. Thursday we had one heck of a rain. I don't know what we had, 53 millimeters or what. And I got swamped where I was, and I didn't do too much until Friday. And I drove out to Hillcrest, and I went behind Mr. Clem's property. He had a person there working, and he's got quite a drop behind his pool. And I went right down to his makeshift fence there, and the ground was spongy, but there was no water lying there. I noticed that. And I went up the street, and there was a fellow who's recently put up a new fence, and I peered in his backyard, and it was the same thing. And to put insult to injury, I was going back to my own house, and I came down Catherine Street, and just before I got to Adelaide Street, I looked at this guy's backyard, and there were 2 geese there. And apparently there's a little lake there that's been there all the time, and I mentioned it to engineering, and they had actually had water in theirs. And I'm sure that those people on Catherine Street would trade places with the people on Barrack Road any day. We had that private meeting, or not private meeting, the public meeting, and I found that after the meeting went on, we had more complaints about fences, pools, tool sheds, and the drainage kind of flew off to the, kind of filtered out. So I'm just wondering if, like you say, there's a private drain that comes off of Barrack to each one of these homeowners' places. And why aren't they being utilized? Is it just because it's the way they hook them up, or they don't want to hook them up? Or I mean, that would be my question. There is a private drain going from Barrack Road to the Storm and Barrack Road, back each one of those properties. That would be for rainwater and
it's for surface water off of each property. It can be collected through a rear yard catch basin and then brought out to the storm sewer system. It gives a little bit of time for water to dissipate in the yard area before it actually enters into the storm sewer system. That's the concept.
Mr. Main?
I'm done, thanks.
Are you done? Any other questions of members of council? Mr. Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Henry, through you, sir, to Henry. The swale itself, I was here that night of that meeting, and everything we have is that the swale is working for everyone on Hillcrest. What we're also saying is that it was, we believe as a city that it's working for everyone on Barrack Road as well. Is that what we're saying as well?
Correct.
As a city. Okay. Then the complaints that are coming up have to be investigated individually to see why these properties are flooding, because they're telling us that they're flooding. I know that one property, I was talking with Mr. Lee, he was indicating that someone had blocked their own way for the water to come off their property. But as long as they are told that, then who is it up to correct that inefficiency, is the only way I can put it.
That's the landowner's responsibility to correct, not the city's.
That's what I wanted to hear.
That's first and foremost.
Okay.
Any other questions, Mr. Mayor, or any other city official? Mr. Dash.
So, and of course we recognize the people from the Berwick area here.
Yeah.
So in our backyards of these houses, are there eaves troughs not tied into these drains? Are there sump pumps not tied into these drains? Like, are they their own worst enemy, or what do you think?
Well, it can be a little bit of surface grading where you just don't have enough slope to get the water towards the swale, that it might lay in little pockets or create a little sponginess, but certainly not major flooding as Councillor Main described in some of the backyards that we have here in the city. I've never experienced that in those yards by any means. I have seen in one where, because of the flower garden area that was built up to the very end of the property, and the understanding of those people was, well, the water's coming from Hillcrest and flooding us out. That's why we raised the flower gardens, but that wasn't the case at all. It's simply they blocked their own water from escaping their backyard through the raised gardens.
Okay, we fear there are no further questions. Time for the question. Oh, Councillor Kennedy, do you have a question?
Not a question, but I'd like to proceed with option B. I think we have to choose, I believe, from the report, that's why it's pulled. It's pulled, said for a decision to be made, and I would like to make the motion that we proceed with option B, that council accept the petition, but not immediately appoint an engineer in attempt to resolve the issue.
I'm not exactly sure which is
Well, that's on,
B and which is
I'm on page 21. The report.
Madam Kenny, we already have a motion on the floor not to accept
I know.
the petition. Do you wish to request that that be a motion to
Well, I guess we have to vote on that, but I'd like to make a motion that we.
Okay, can we vote
so
on
I guess
that
we have to vote on that option first. Yeah, I guess yes.
Okay, is that cleared with it for everyone? So we call the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented? Opposed? Motion fails. Or motion is accepted. Your motion fails.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benner.
Okay.
Okay. Item number 2. That was with Kenny as well.
Mr. Mayor, there's a few people questioning exactly what that is. There are out in the audience who are affected by that. So if that motion could be repeated just so they understand where we are.
Madam Clerk?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, the motion that was approved by council is that the petition as per section 5 sub 1A of the Drainage Act pertaining to 327, 333, and 347 Barrack Road not be accepted.
And that motion was carried. Okay, item number 2. Moving on. Colborne Farmers Market. Ms. Kenny, that was yours.
It's mine, yeah. Just 1 second so I can find it, Your Worship. Community and Corporate Services Division, report number 2017-64, subject Port Colborne Farmers Market, increased vendor and product diversity.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Madam Demery? Discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for the report. I was happy to see us looking at increasing the size of the market, as I know many times our market clerk says that she has many, even the report addresses that. people that she has to turn away because there's not enough room. And I see the options about where that extra spot could be, and what the fire department feels is a good spot as well, which is important. So the only thing I'd like to question in the report is, it's on page 40. It's from the Engineering and Operations Department. It said, I believe this is the to expand onto the one-way street, which belongs to us, that street that leads to right across where our old or our former fire hall was. It's and it says that's under option 2, and it says this option would require closure setup, and then it's got overtime and take down transportation storage by the roads division. Why would that be overtime when it's during the normal hours that we operate?
Mr. Hanson.
Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Kenny, the road closures for the options that require a road closure will require a hard closure at 5:30 to 6 o'clock in the morning before the market starts. Staff aren't starting until 7 in the morning, so there'd be a crew of at least two workers with barricades to close the roads prior to the market opening. That would entail overtime for that crew.
Okay, if I could.
Go ahead.
I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hanson, that if we give notice ahead of time, that we can ask for their hours to be changed with no overtime.
Through you, Mr. Mayor,
Through the union.
Sorry.
Thank you.
To Councillor Kenny, that's correct. We can schedule overtime. If it's council's direction that they want a crew in place to close the roads every Friday, we would have to schedule a crew to do that. Other than have that scheduled overtime for that crew, changed hours, it would be an overtime reflection on it.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what I want you to know. So, well, they didn't get off early. Well, I think that of all the options that we were offered, I think that's a very good option. But in this report also, as you know, one of the I'm very happy that you have on here the expansion of the area occupied by the farmers market would provide an opportunity to increase the number of vendors and product diversity. And I know one of the people, because they approached me, and I had spoken to the market clerk before, but we weren't doing that, and that was one of them was the sale of the VQA wine and fruit wine as a potential increase, and I'm glad that that's mentioned in the report because I think that's important. But I wondered why I had also asked, and I know application has been made to the clerk in regards to the sale of children's clothing. And I don't see that. I guess maybe the word vendor means a vendor that sells clothing. And I know that we could limit those spots just like we do with the crafters. There's, I believe the market clerk told me that they can have three, yes, two, sorry, okay, two. And with the extra spaces, which I know that we're going to gain from that street, that one-way street, by giving notice now to the business. I don't think the most person or business that would be affected would be the bank, I guess, for their access to their banking machine. But I don't know if any other business would be affected. But if there's no deliveries on Friday morning, I think that would be the only thing I could think of. But anyways, regardless, I was wondering if we could include the same courtesy as we do to the crafters and have two non-market, just like they're not market, they're crafters for clothing, two stalls. But that's no, not just no. Well, the market clerk tells people if she's full, they can't come. If they're full and there's no spot for you this week. But we're increasing, if this goes through, if council approves this, and we're increasing the market, which is good because we should be expanding. If we have interest and there's, interest in making it better, and the market is great. I try to go when I'm off. I try to go every market. I'm there. So I think it's great that we are getting some diversity, and I wait for other comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rogers, then Councillor Doucette.
Sure, just to pick up on Councillor Kenny's comments of crafters, it also says that it has to be made by the person that is in there, not somebody bringing clothes in from offshore or someplace else and then selling them. That's what a business for downtown. That's what you should be doing. I have no interest in changing the market to just anybody that's got something for sale. It, you know, and I'm a little confused about the recommendation on here too. It says, be received for information. Councillor Kenny leads us to believe we're going to expand the market onto that street. What's the? You might want to walk over and talk to a couple of the people that have businesses there. You know, maybe even if they're receiving goods that day, but they're also delivering stuff out of the back of their, you know, so it might not be as easy as just closing that street. I've had occasion to talk to a couple of them, and they're, you know, I would hope our staff has gone over and knocked on the door too to get a handle on that. Anyways, back to the crafters. If you make it, I say you could sell it at the market, but if you're just bringing it in, it'd be like a booth on Canal Days selling belts and everything else. Thank you.
Councillor Demery, well, first of all, Councillor Doucette, then Councillor Demery, Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Bodnar. One of the examples I was given at one point was that children's clothing isn't being sold in town for children. Well, I believe Bargain Shop does that. Okay? I also believe that there's a few other stores that have children's clothing. So we have to make sure that if we're going to open up to crafters, that they're crafters, and that the crafting that they do isn't buying it from offshore and bringing it in and selling it. An example of that also was a couple of years ago when someone was selling bedding. He was selling at a very good price, but he was competing with everyone in town, and eventually he was asked not to come back, I believe. That was the same idea. The farmers market is there for people who want to make things, grow things, and then sell them. If that's not what we're doing, then we're not creating a market anymore. A section of that is not a market anymore. If you're bringing in stuff, it's just vendors going around like Councillor Bonner said at Canal Days, and guys are selling hats, belts, and whatever else, and they go from show to show and they do it all over the place. That's what's going to happen. We're going to wind up with a bunch of people like that. And I think we need to be very careful that that isn't what our market turns into. Because I would be very sad to do that. I'm here not all Fridays, but most Fridays. And that would sadden me to see our market turned into something of that nature. And I believe it would leave a bad taste in the mouths of people who come to look and find a market. There's a lot of people that come to our market that tell me they love our market because it's a market, as traditionally the way we see a market. Okay? And I think we need to continue that. We really do.
Thank you, Councillor Doucette. Councillor Demery, then Councillor May.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm totally in favor of expanding our market. I think that's the best thing we could ever do. And in expanding the goods that are sold, I particularly like the idea of being able to look at wines and fruit wines there. I think that's a great thing. I was speaking with the market clerk about sampling wines at the market. I don't know how that will work. I do understand that, you know, a lot of times you're reluctant to buy a bottle of wine unless you can know what it's going to taste like. But at the same time, I don't think sampling wines is going to work in that market. I don't want to see us do anything that will allow us to lose that farmers market designation. That I don't want to see. So that could be a bit of an issue. And we may want to look at having an auxiliary market somewhere else nearby on the same morning to be able to accommodate other kinds of vendors. I don't know, but that does concern me. I was a little confused about the way this report laid out as well, because it does say to be received for information and then gives us options as to what it is that we may want to do to expand the market. So I'm assuming that means we receive what's out there and then we rely on staff to go out and get the information and give us a recommendation on the best option. But in any case, I think option 2 works well. So just want to put my word in on that. Thank you.
Mr. May?
I think Mr. Sinez had a comment first.
Yes, Mr. Sinez.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The report, just through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Demery, the report really was written for information purposes so that council can have the information, debate the information, and then provide direction to staff as to what you really want us, what staff to look at and do. Then we would go back and do any legwork that we may need to do based on what council is looking for and wants to do, and we would bring back a final report to council with any changes to the bylaw that may come forward from those particular changes that council would want to see come forward. So we are really leaving it to council's direction for staff so that we can bring something more concrete to council if they want to change anything.
Thank you, Mr. Sinez. Mr. Mean, are you finished?
I haven't started yet. I give Peter my spot. Sorry. Sorry, Peter. I didn't. Through Mr. Mayor, just my own comments. I read over this whole package a couple times to try to make sense of it. We do have a very vibrant farmers market. And like Mr. Doucette said, there's people come from all over to come to our market. If we need to expand it, I have no issue with that. But we still have to, my feelings anyway, is to keep our farmers market the way it was designed to, the way the bylaw sets up that it should be. And but the other concern I have is all these options. We want to do this, we want to do that. Basically, the people who you're blocking in should have the #1 say in what goes on. And a lot of people told me, well, it's only 1 day a week, but that's 4 days a month. And how many days, to inconvenience somebody to get to their property? You can't deny them their access. And I think if the market needs to be bigger, our clerk would tell us that. She has more people to come in. But my way of thinking, I would only support a farmer's market for the way we set it up, because it seems to work. And if it keeps on working, why break it?
Thank you.
I'm done. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Bonner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we're talking about options, I kind of like option 4, the expansion into King George Park. Right off the bat, it says this option would not interfere with local businesses, impede traffic, or decrease the number of available parking stalls. It does say, however, public health regulation may prohibit the sale of food products on this grassy area. I'd be interested to know whether it would impede the sale of wine. If we set up a wine area there, and we could do like we did at any food festivals, where they simply bring plywood, put it down inside their stall, and unless they've changed the health regulations, they're good to go. And the plywood's only there for a short time on that grass. I don't believe it would hurt it. And then we don't, I agree with Councillor Maine, you can't ask those businesses to be, on a Friday, don't make deliveries out of your back door, like the flowers and, Rossman's delivering furniture or something. Maybe they could put it to another day, but maybe some people need it that day. So, we kind of shut them off during canal days. I don't know that, I certainly wouldn't be in favor of shutting them off another day of the week. So I'd like to see us look at that King George Park option and, see if we can pick up a few stalls. And it could be a temporary thing too. If it doesn't work, then the next year you look at something else. Thank you.
I have a question for our market clerk. did you visit the homes or the businesses that back onto the Market Square from King Street? Rossman's and Atkinson's and Sidey's. Have you approached any of them with this idea of having the market expand into the right away there, one-way street, one-way lane?
On Fridays, they are all busy with deliveries. So there's the bank, there's Sally Ann, Sidey's, and Rossman's.
But have you approached those?
No, not yet.
You have not approached them. Mr. Sinnes? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we haven't approached them with regard to the report that we have before you, only because I think we had in the report that if council should so choose to want to expand in that laneway, then we would go consult with the business and bring it back. But if council wasn't going in that direction, then there was no point in consulting with them. I know that in the past, whenever we have blocked off the laneway, that we did receive complaints from the business because they wanted into that laneway so they can get to the back of their buildings, especially CIBC with a lot of seniors that want to drive to the bank and get to the bank from the back end. I know we get a lot of complaints during canal days when we close it off. So it does happen, but it would be something that we would have to go back to them and see and consult with them if council so chooses to look at that as an option.
There's too many options flying around here tonight. As I understand what's the flavor of what's happened here tonight, that most members of council are in favor of expansion of the market site. And it's boiled down to whether it's option 2 or option 4. But we're not quite ready to make that decision until further information is requested. We have another issue on expansion of products for sale. And the suggestion has been made that the sale of wine may be appropriate, may not be appropriate. And then we have a third problem that we have to address the idea of whether children's clothing is acceptable as a market item. Can you answer that question? Is children's clothing manufactured wherever acceptable as a market item?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, on the last item, the clothing, no, it's not acceptable under the current bylaw. That would have to be a decision of council if council chooses to change the types of products that are within the bylaw right now. But right now it does not fall under our bylaw. It's not considered a craft. The crafts that we have in the bylaw that council has defined is homemade products. That would have to be either homemade and Canadian homemade would be that. As far as expansion goes, the expansion into King George Park is one option that staff would have to talk to the public health as to depending on what council would want to expand there, whether or not if it's just crafters that they would want to expand there, or food or wine vendors. We would have to then investigate that as to what would be required and if they would, if the wineries or any food vendors would even consider doing that based on the public health regulations. So that would be one. As far as if council chooses to get more information from the businesses for the laneway closure, then we would, and the council gave us that direction, then we would talk to the businesses on that to bring forward that information. And as far as the wine goes, again, council can accept or right now it is permitted if council so chooses. We would have to, council would have to put in the bylaw that we don't want to have wine in order to send that off to AGCO to tell them that we don't want to participate in that. And council can make other considerations within the bylaw with regard to wine as to whether or not you want to have tasting or just have them for sale. You can restrict it more than what the GCO is restricting. So it would be direction that we would be looking for council as to if we want to leave everything the way it is, or if we want to expand. Do we want more information on the two areas of potential expansion, and potentially if whether or not council wants to have wine as part of the market or not. So that's the direction we would be looking for from council.
Subject to Mr. Main's comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would think that we need a little bit more discussion on this. I think the recommendation probably is where we should be at to receive for information. Councillor Bodner mentioned about sampling wine. And I've been in this town my whole life, and I know that this town is full of samplers. So that could be a big issue at Park.
Exactly.
So, you know what I mean? It's not the connoisseur crowd, it's the sampler crowd, and we might have an issue with that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Skenny, you had your hand up?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out to council that I think we've already passed item 4 where we have somebody already in the park. That was item 4, which was passed. And so how could we have vendors in there too? We've already passed that, so the park is out because we've already passed that. It's already gone through, so we'd have to choose another option, I guess. But I guess the thing is this.
Go ahead.
Okay, I guess, like you said, we'd have to have our report back. Just, I think the majority want an expansion. I think the market clerk is here. We should probably ask her because she's the one that's been saying many times that she has to turn people away, and it's sad you have to turn people away. If we have room for more, then let's get more in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rodner, and then Mr. Sinnes.
Thank you. Just to comment on Councillor Main's sampling. There goes my Friday mornings. I had it all scoped out, but anyways. So King George Park. I've been there when Joe's doing his show. 15, 20 people there. Park isn't big, but it's not small. He can do it on the other side of the sidewalk, I'm sure, and he could still have enough room for 5 or 6 stalls somehow in that park. So I don't think we should just dismiss it as far as, there might not be room. And the other thing, just on the public health, not allowing food products in there. I find it hard to believe when I go to those farmers to pick up produce from Iftadi's or some of the Apple guy and some other ones. They're pulling it out of the ground. They're putting it in bushel baskets. They're coming here, and the health department's going to tell them they can't sell it over top of grass. If that's the case, I think we're more screwed up than I thought. But anyways, the health department will tell us that. But I just, I hope that isn't the case. I know food product. If you're making sandwiches or something, yeah, okay. But, gee, the guy selling stuff he just pulled out of the ground that morning, I hope that isn't the case.
Mr. Sinnes, you had a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just with regard to the musician in the farmers or in the King George Park, it's not every Friday that he's also there. I believe, if I can read this, Friday morning markets would be Friday, April 28th, May 20th, one Friday each month of April, May, June, July, August, and September. The other Fridays wouldn't be there. But we would have to determine, how much space we would have there. And because the other thing that we have to look at is people do sit in the park during the day. They may buy some sausages on a bun or whatever. They do sit there and eat their lunch and so on. So we'd have to look at what that balance is between any types of vendors and what types of vendors, and the musician and the public that would be in the park.
I did speak with Mr. Crawford today at a volunteer appreciation event, and I did make him aware of the potential conflict on the uses of the St. George's Park. And he wouldn't say he agreed to it, but he certainly was aware of it and said he's prepared to work with council on that issue. I don't know how big that park is and how many stalls we could put in with the Joey Crawford. I think it's once a month that he's going to be at the market, and the first one is this Friday. Any event, the recommendation was that the report be received for information. I think that's, as Mr. Vane has pointed out, that's where we appear to be at. Or we're narrowing it down, but there's further information required to finalize it as to what options may be available and what items may or may not be up for sale. Mr. Zaness?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think what I would like is some direction from council as to what you want to bring us to bring back forward. Like, as you mentioned, wine. Does council want to have wine being sold in our market? Yes or no? Do we want an expansion of the market? Yes or no? And if yes, is it the one-way street? Should we consult the businesses, or do you want to look at King's George Park and have us investigate with public health and what types of vendors? You just want crafters as the expansion, and we got to watch how many crafters we bring in, because we don't want to jeopardize, I guess, the qualification of farmers market. And the types of, are we going to stay with, is council just looking at continuing under the existing bylaw with regard to the definition of crafters, or are you expanding the products? Those are the direction I think that we're really looking from council. Just to receive it for information and not provide us with direction, we won't know what to bring back to council.
Thank you for those comments, Mr. Sinnes. Mr. Vader.
I think one thing we also don't want to do is mess up the Guild Hall where they have their crafters in there. I mean, they've worked hard to get that going, and we wouldn't want to compete too much with them, I don't think, either. So there's a balance to be raised there.
And we do send vendors to the hall.
Yeah. I think we're lacking a little bit of information too. When we hear that there's spots requested in the market, how many, and are they farm produce products that are requesting? We know that there's people requesting to sell clothes, but who's actually out there if we were to expand? And do we kind of have that info, or are we,
Well, Mr. Sinnes is looking for some direction, I think, to go back to. Diane, do you have a comment?
Grab a
Could you
mic.
go to the podium and press the little red button?
There, I found it. Yes, it's called a true farmer's market. And I do have a few spaces available, and I also have a few fruit and vegetable growers that are interested in coming into the market. And if I have a list of this, that, and the other thing, of course, the fruit and vegetable growers will be the first to pick to fill these spaces.
Mr. Bader?
Then I guess my question is, if we're looking and we're thinking we need to expand, what's reasonable? 1 stall, 6 stalls? Like, what do we need for expansion? If we're doing the whole street, can we fill it up, and what would we fill it up with? So, just so we don't get, too far ahead of ourselves with.
If that one-way street is closed off, you could possibly have 12 to 15 vendors. Possibly, maybe 10 to 12.
We have enough demand.
But then again, it would be interfering with the businesses along the way.
Councilor Kenny and Councilor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Diane. Diane, if we just put it in the park then?
In the park?
In the park.
Okay.
Never mind interfering with the businesses or anything,
Okay.
just put it in the park.
In the park?
And if we have, say if we add, let's say we just say you want to expand, so we're going to expand. Is 6 stalls enough? Say if we say we're going to put 6 more stalls in.
I would say that would be enough, so it wouldn't interfere with people eating at the 2 picnic tables.
Right, you got to leave room for that.
But
That's the one.
you can't sell food on the grass.
No, would have to be the artisan, I guess they're called artisan crafters, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? And are we expanding that too? And no sampling, as Councillor Meehan pointed out,
No.
he doesn't think so. So you've had people ask you about wine. You've told me that yourself.
Yes,
So
that was
sale of wines could be there because they're not opening them, right?
right. But see,
So-
I heard that they were giving out samples, and for Port Colborne, it's not a good thing.
Okay, so we don't have sampling, right?
Right.
We could put that in our bylaw, right? No sampling.
Councilor Demery.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're going kind of all over the map here tonight, and I just would like you to, if you would lead us through a selection on, as Mr. Smith said, do we want to expand? Do we want the winery, or wineries rather, and what location is it that we're looking at? But just quickly, if you look through the report, if we were to use the park, which is not my first choice, but it works. You're going to get at least 6 spots in there, and you have 6 non-food vendors in the market now. So if you just transfer them over there, you have now the market area to expand in any way you want. So that would work.
But also keep in mind that 50 and above marketers is going to cost the city an extra $300 to $400 for liability insurance per person.
But does that not get transferred to the fees the marketers are
I don't
paying?
think so, Peter.
Oh, we're paying for that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do purchase farmers insurance through the Farmers Market Association, and that cost is, depending on how many we have, that cost does get as part of the fee structure. Now, once you do, as Diane mentioned, once you do above the 50, then the cost is increased, which means then the cost gets, that additional cost will get spread out over the rest, so their cost will increase.
Okay, we need more information. You need some direction. Why don't we just go through this one step at a time to give you the direction you need based on quick and dirty resolution or comment on vote on whether we want, first of all, do we want to expand the market? Is that yes or no? Yes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 in favor, 1 opposed?
I want to see what we're expanding into. I'm not interested
Okay, all
in
right.
crafters. I'm interested in expanding.
But we got to start somewhere, so that's what we want to expand. All right. Next item is where we want to expand to. We have option 2 and we have option 4, as I understand are the favored sites. Or do you wish staff to bring us back a further report on option 2 or option 4? All those in favor of further report without designating which option? Yes?
Further report. Yeah.
Further report on where?
I think we should have a report on both, so that way we can
Option
really understand.
2 or 4?
Joanne?
Okay, there's the vote. All those in favor? 2?
I'm sorry, who was the mover and seconder?
I'm trying to scoot through. Madam Demery made the motion on location, option 2 and 4. All those, and is there a seconder for that motion? Councilor Doucette. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. That, who's missing? Mr. Elliott and So that carries. Right? 2 opposed, 4 in favor. All right, so that's further direction. And you need a nominator and a seconder for, or we're okay there?
We have a mover and seconder for that motion.
Okay. Now, what's the next item you would like, Mr. Sinnes?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you would want to determine what type of expansion of products you would.
What products?
Does it stay the same as what we have in the bylaw, or do you want to expand that?
Well, we got more options there. Do you wish, all right, let's deal with that one. Do you wish the expansion items for sale to be the same as it is now, or not? Is there a mover for that? Is moving that it be the same?
Just a point of clarification. As it is now, are we allowed to add wine in now, or is? Okay, so then yes, as it is now.
As it is now, including wine, moved by Madam Demery, seconded by Mr. Maine.
Sorry, if there's, I'm just not, if the preference is status quo in terms of the selection of products, I don't believe we need a motion on that.
Clerk, I think rightfully points out if it's status quo now, we don't necessarily need a motion on that item. But there are some that wish to change the status quo. So maybe we should have a vote on whether the status quo goes forward. Mr. Bonder, you're going to jump in?
Status quo means the market clerk could investigate wine sales.
Yes.
Am I understanding that?
Yes.
Okay.
But doesn't approve wine sales?
No, just she could investigate, well, it should.
Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Under the current under the Liquor License Control Act, sale of VQA wines and fruit wines and cider is already permitted in the market, as well as sampling. Council would in fact have to opt out. So under the current provincial regulations, it's allowed. The other thing that council could do, though, is regulate it, meaning that if council was not in favor of the sampling of those products, then direction to that effect would be required, and it would be communicated then to the AGCO.
Mr. Bonder?
That was my question. Can we pass a bylaw saying no samples? Because if I was a winery, I'd sure as heck want to give out samples. And if I could do it in the other markets, why couldn't I do it here? I'm not saying it's the right thing. I'm just saying, can we do the bylaw and will it stick? So.
Yes, Mr. Maine.
My wife and I are the wine tour people in the whole world. You can't even go to a winery and get a free sample. You pay the $5, you get the 3 little glasses. So there's a charge for it. Nothing's for free anymore. So the issue would be with our market, if somebody wanted a sample, you would have to charge for it. You couldn't give it away for free. So then wouldn't that come under something else with the Liquor Control Board?
Yeah.
I mean, like even when you go to the wineries now on a tour, you have to pay for your sample. So.
And you must also realize this is 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
The question is who's going to be tasting.
5 o'clock somewhere.
That's the whole question.
Well, here in Port Colborne at 9 o'clock. You're not making this easy. Okay. Do we wish to leave the issue of wine sales status quo? Yes, I agree. We can pick it up in the next report. So I don't think we need to vote on that. Okay. What's your final item, Mr. Sinnes, that you'd like some direction on?
To you, Mr. Mayor, I believe the fact that council is looking at status quo of the types of products that are sold, then it's strictly crafters as per definition, and all the food products and so on, farmers market. That essentially covers off the types of products. We will have to bring back as to any differences. We'd have to consult with the businesses for the one-way street, bring that back to council to determine if that's an option that council would want to go forward on, or in the park, as to some information from public health as to the types of vendors, if it's food vendors or only crafters or wineries that can go into the park itself. And that's the expansion question. I think that covers.
So that's all the direction you feel you require.
I think that covers all the issues that was brought forward through Councillor Kenny's motion.
Have we covered the issue of the trailer selling child's garments?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if it's based on the current product definitions that is in the current bylaw, then clothing is not part of the what can be sold in the market.
You appreciate that, Mrs. Kenny?
I wanted consideration given, since we're talking about diversity. That's what I wanted. I wanted the ability for, I mean, that's why we have a market clerk. Our market clerk decides if they put in an application, she makes the final decision. I just wanted it open that the individual would have an opportunity to apply for a spot at the market. And everyone that's at the table, so far all the comments I've heard is they don't want that. They don't want diversity at all. What they want is a true farmer's market. That's what they want. They don't want any changes. So the only change they want is expansion, but they don't want any other diversity other than expansion.
Mr. Sinat, you had a comment?
No, it's just exactly what Councillor Kenny mentioned. That's what I've heard right now from council so far.
Then you have the direction that you require. It's a question of what do we do with the motion currently? Is to receive for information, is that enough for you, or do you want to actually
You're receiving the report for information with the staff direction as being provided by council to come back with a further report on those items for council decision.
Can I call for a vote then on those comments? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Okay. Next item for consideration is item number 6. Madam Kenny, if you care to make the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 6 is Engineering and Operations Engineering Division Report number 2017-49, subject Roselawn accessibility improvements.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Main? Discussion? Yes, Councillor Kenny?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one thing I want to ask about this. Just because, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. Hanson, just because I'm concerned about the heritage factor in the building. And this one system that you're recommending, this second mechanical lift supplier, this is recommended to design the incline wheelchair lift, which would bring, I guess, an individual who has problems navigating stairs up to the main level, the dining room area. But the system would not compromise, I guess, the existing staircase. Is that what you're saying?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kenny, the existing staircase where you come in off the parking lot into the main vestibule, the entrance to either go upstairs to the dining room or downstairs to the theater, that wouldn't be compromised. This is we're recommending a mobile lift. It would actually run on a rail from that level up to the dining room level or around the rail down to the basement level, or the lower level, I should say, which has the handicapped accessible washroom and also the entrance to the theater. Neither one of the lifts recommended are part of the Heritage Building. They're both external to the Heritage Building.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Main.
Just a comment. Through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Hanson, would this be similar to what they have at the Legion already? To get the upstairs of the Legion, it's a
Yes.
up it goes. It doesn't take up a lot of room when it's not being used.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councilor Main, it's very similar to that, probably more, possibly more modern than that one. And there's 2 flights of stairs. The nice feature I think about this is that it folds up when it gets to the top level at the railings. It actually folds up and is out of the way and doesn't block any of the access along the aisleways at the main level. So it shouldn't have very much impact. The first system we looked at, the alternate system that's shown in here, was actually an actual elevator type system, open at the top, but an elevator system, which in effect would have taken out the stairs to the lower level and resided in that lower level and then come up to the 2 different levels. So we didn't like that option because it actually took away the day-to-day access to the basement level along that flight of stairs and also the access to that accessible washroom. So the mobile lift that goes on its own railing between the different levels, it isn't intrusive at all on the existing staircases. That's the benefit of it. And pretty much the same price.
Thank you. This is what I want to know. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Bonner?
Thank you. To you, to Mr. Hanson. I think this is a great option. The video links you sent us really shows how they work, and it's pretty slick. And you're right. When it's all said and done, it's just sitting there. It's not very, it doesn't take up a lot of room. So I think you did a good job in sourcing this out. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? I just have a clarification. The main entrance vestibule, that is the theater entrance, not the front entrance to the Heritage Building?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. This is the vestibule. The main access is off the parking lot on the west side of the building, not the front entrance.
Thank you. Any further comments? Let's call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Next item is item number 7. I believe that was Councilor Kenny as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Engineering and Operations Division's report number 2017-53, subject water meter replacement project summary.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Councilor Demray? Got any questions or comments?
Thank you, Mr.
Kenny?
Mayor. Thank you. Just a question in regards to the whole project from the Neptune Technology Group to replace the city's water meters. The total amount, we have $90,000 remaining in that project. And then it says, goes on as, it says, additionally, as per council's direction with respect to reduced and the unbilled unaccounted for water in the distribution system. A fire service meter was installed at the Seaway Pollution Control Plan in April 2017. It says the meter was previously purchased, however, the chamber had not been purchased. Why? Why was the chamber not purchased at the same time? I guess I want to know why. And then it goes on to say the cost to purchase and install the chamber for the water meter is estimated at $95,000, which would take up some of that, I guess, that money, unless the region, but if someone could answer that question, why the chamber wasn't purchased at the same time that the meter was up there, that would be great.
Here, Mr. Mayor to Councilor Kenny, the fire control meter at the Seaway plant was not part of the original
tender for water meters. Darlene's added this to the report. There were, if you can recall, there were 3 industries, including the Seaway plant and 2 other industries, which were unmetered in terms of fire lines into the locations. So we are actively budgeting and pursuing the installation of those meters. The second one will be going in this summer that we had discussed previously. The water meter, fire flow meter for the Seaway plant was purchased last year. We hadn't yet determined all the details on the location for it at the Seaway plant and the plumbing layout for it. So the chamber wasn't purchased at the time, only the meter for the fire line going into the plant. So that was purchased earlier this year and installed in April of this year, was just completed. So that's in place. We've also requested cost sharing from the region on that, given it's their facility, of 50% funding. So originally it was not part of the water metering program and not included in it, but we've included that as part of the metering process now in the report to sort of summarize where we are with metering.
That's what, so on our original, that's what I was trying to get. So originally we did not even talk about that, right?
No, that's correct.
But if there's the 90,721 remaining, and just say we get that, and then it says the cost is 95, but it will not be 95 if the region chips in their 50%, right? It won't be 95?
Hopefully it will be 47.5. Correct.
Good. So then, thank you. And then it says, after the May 2015 meeting, where we replaced this total, it says, Council approved an additional debenture of $295,000, and it says, but we need to cover the remaining costs of the project, and the final amount is the $295,000 debentures required.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That was approved in 2015.
Okay. And not added to what we just...
No.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want you to know that. Thanks.
Any other questions? Mr. Maine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Mr. Francis. Just out of curiosity, these chambers, are they precast, Ron?
Yes, they're concrete precast chambers that are, they're either off-the-shelf type sizes. We try to use those as much as possible. If you get into confined space where the plumbing is a little more difficult, sometimes you have to customize the size of the chamber, which of course drives the cost of it up. But they're all precast with concrete lids after the plumbing's installed.
Thank you.
There being no further questions, I'd call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Next item is number 8. I believe that was Angie Damaris. Is that right?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Planning and Development, Planning Division, report number 2017-60, subject 2016 year-end results, Community Improvement Plan incentive programs.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Councilor Danch. Discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Aquilina. Dan, I did ask you a few questions on this, and I just had a couple more that I ran out of time to ask you before the meeting began. First, I'd like to say that I'm really impressed with the way this is working for the city. These incentive programs are working amazingly. You can see by the pictures that all the photos that are included, the difference it's making in some of the buildings. So I would hope this would continue on for a long time. The residential component of it still has me somewhat concerned. And what I'd like to know is, do you get any requests for the residential component that have to be turned down or that can't be entirely satisfied?
Mr. Aquilina.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councilor Desmarais, if you're referring to the residential above the second story commercial?
No, the east side, the east waterfront.
Through Mr. Mayor, no, we have not had to turn anyone down on the east side. Yes, no turn down.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah. That's the only question I had.
Only question. Any other questions? Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Next was item number 10. Alderman Danch.
Sherkston Shores, 490 Empire Road, Port Colborne, request to hold weekly fireworks display events for 2017.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Kenny? Discussion?
I just pulled this for the conflict of Councillor Bowder. I have no problem with this.
Anybody wish to discuss this matter? All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Bowder did not exercise his franchise. That would appear to be the end of all the items for discussion. Are there any notices of motion? There being none, I'd call for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Datch, second by Councillor Doucette. This meeting is adjourned. We now move on to the regular meeting of Council 10-17, Monday, April 24th. I'm calling this meeting to order. Are there any addendum items, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None this evening.
I call for a motion to confirm the agenda. Moved by Councillor Kenny, second by Councillor Demery. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Are there any disclosures of interest? Councillor Bodnar.
Item 10, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. That shall be so noted. Call for the adoption of minutes of the regular meeting of Council 09-17 held on April 10th, 2017. Motion, Councillor Datch. Seconder, Councillor Demery. All those in favor? Carried. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. There being none?
Councillor Dance there.
What?
Item 10 for conflict.
Item 10, okay. Item 10. Someone wish to make the recommendation? Councillor Doucette, seconded by Councillor Main. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor? Carried. Councillor Bodnar did not exercise his vote. Can we call now for approval of items not requiring separate discussion? Moved by Councillor Kenny, second by Councillor Demery. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. There are no proclamations this evening. Minutes of boards, commissions, and committees. We have the minutes of the Port Colborne Public Library Board meeting of March 7th, 2017. I entertain a motion to accept those minutes of the library. Moved by Councillor Datch, seconded by Councillor Main. Any discussion? There being none, call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Consideration of bylaws. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the following bylaws be enacted and passed. Bylaw 64622917 being a bylaw to temporarily close sections of various streets to vehicular traffic for the purposes of the Port Colborne Downtown Cruise Nights. Bylaw 64633017 being a bylaw to authorize entering into a lease agreement with Psychological Rentals respecting the Lighthouse at Lockgate Gateway Park. And finally, bylaw 64643117 being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting of April 24th, 2017.
Those in favor? Moved by Councillor Doucette, seconded by Councillor Main. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. That would appear to be the end of the agenda. There are no in-camera meetings this evening. I'd entertain a motion for adjournment. Councillor Danch, seconded by Councillor Demery. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, staff, as well. Have a good evening.